Are you ready to take your career to the next level? This is IISE's Michael Hughes. Earning a master's in engineering management from the University of Louisville can strengthen your leadership skills and open new career opportunities in just 10 courses. In U of L's fully online program, you take just one course at a time whenever it's most convenient, making it easy to balance life and education. All you need is a bachelor's in a STEM field. Six Sigma Black Belt certification available and no GRE required. Engineer the future. Get signed up today at louisville.edu/online.
This is Problem Solved, the IISE podcast, where we talk to industrial and systems engineers about their work, ideas, and solutions.
Hello and welcome to Problem Solved, the IISE podcast. I'm Keith Albertson, managing editor of IISE Magazine. Today's guest is Shaul Ladani. He's a professor emeritus of industrial engineering at Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Beersheba, Israel. In addition to his noted academic career as an instructor, researcher, and author, he also excelled as a world-class athlete and as a Holocaust survivor who, as a child, spent 6 months in a concentration camp in Germany. As a competitive race walker, Professor Ladani set records that still stand, and he competed in the 1968 and 1972 Olympics. In his second trip to the Games in Munich, Germany, he was one of the Israeli athletes who escaped a terrorist attack that claimed the lives of 11 of his teammates. In a recent phone interview from his home in Israel, he discussed his background, his athletic career, and his academic efforts. Professor Ladani begins by discussing his childhood background and how his family provided the first introduction to science and engineering.
I was born in a middle-class family. My father was a chemical engineer and a patent attorney. Even his uncle, that was almost his brother, because when the uncle studied at high school, he stayed in my father's room with my grandfather. And so they were almost brothers. That relative, I would almost call him uncle, but he was uncle of my father. He became a doctor of chemistry. And so whatever I remember from my childhood and later on, the discussions at home were usually on science and engineering. And nobody told me that I should study engineering and so on. Whatever I heard at home, that influenced my interest. By the way, my father studied, one of his teachers was Fritz Haber. Fritz Haber got the Nobel Prize for trying to get the nitrogen out of air. And for some period of time, my father worked with Theodor Reichstein, who got the Nobel Prize, not in chemistry, but in medicine. But he was a chemist. Among many things, he was the first to synthesize vitamin C. So you see, my father was also an able person.
Professor Ladani talks about his family's struggles during the war and the challenges they faced in an effort to escape the Nazis.
I was born in Belgrade, and at age 5, I was already bombed by the Germans when they attacked in a surprise attack Yugoslavia in 1941. Mm-hmm. So I evidenced that awful thing of being bombed. I evidenced escaping, then trying to escape out of Yugoslavia taking the risk of, if we are caught on the other side, on the Hungarian side, then we will be, and they will discover that we are Jews, we will be killed on the spot. And if we remain in Serbia, they might kill us there. And indeed, many of those that remained there, most of them were gassed, gas in trucks with the exhaust fumes of the engines. That was the first attempt that the Nazis killed Jews by gassing them. So we have been refugees in Hungary. I have been for a time also in a monastery, awful times, not because they did something wrong to me, because I was afraid that it will be discovered that I'm a Jew, and then I will be killed. And then I was in ghetto, and then later on, in half a year, in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. So I had some experience what it meant, Holocaust.
Mm. And how were you able to escape? You were helped by a group in America, correct?
It's a long story written both in my autobiography. Toward the end of the war, in exchange of close to 2,000 Jews, we were transferred to Switzerland.
After they lost everything during the war, Ladani's family looked to rebuild their lives and eventually settled in the new nation of Israel.
After the war, we returned to Yugoslavia. And because there were no alternatives. So you probably know, United States did not allow Jewish immigrants in masses to come in. There were very small quotas. And neither to Palestine, most of the Jews, surviving Jews, wanted to get to Palestine, but the British authorities that had the mandate to Palestine closed the door. They had a quota of 2,000 people per year. That's nothing. So we returned to Yugoslavia, rebuilt or repaired the ruined or the bombed villa of my parents. Repaired their villa. They started the factory that my father had, and so on, until the state of Israel was established. And then, as a condition for leaving Yugoslavia to Israel, we had to give up everything. Have you seen people that are willing to give up all their property just for the right to leave the country and to get to the country of their wish?
Ladani's family faced many hardships in their early years in Israel, but they were able to finally create a home as he began his academic studies and his athletic career.
What was it like in Israel those early days as a young nation?
I can tell you, we lived but we improved the conditions as we arrived. After 2 weeks, we got some old house without electricity, without running water, in the garden, a primitive Turkish closet, no kitchen. I, as a not yet 13-year-old, walked with 2 buckets to the only place about a mile away to get water, and bring water to us.
But you were free, so it was worth it at the time. After all,
we were free.
Yes.
It's very difficult, really, to imagine such conditions of life. And I was able then to participate in the first Israeli marathon competition, the first in '56. And in the competition there were only 10 competitors without proper training.
Ladani's career as a race walker began in Israel at a long-distance walking event and later led him to more competitive efforts.
I found out that I have excellent walking abilities. 1 or 2 years later on, I entered for the first time the Israeli national championship in race walking, and have beaten the Israeli champion of that time for the distance of 3,000 meters, a little less than 2 miles, which is 7.5 laps in a stadium, and I have beaten him by almost a full lap. And from that time on, I became a full-time race walker.
After he served in the Israeli military, Ladani began pursuing academic degrees in mechanical engineering. He sought his PhD in business administration and later studied industrial engineering.
When I started my studies immediately after the military service at the Israeli Institute of Technology, I started mechanical engineering. Industrial engineering studies did not exist at that time in Israel. Only 1 year after the start of my studies, they started such a program. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, and then a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and later on I got married after my getting my first degree, and moved to Jerusalem, where my wife worked for PhD in biochemistry, endocrinology, and my first job was the manager of the mechanical workshop of the Hebrew University. So after a year, I wanted to continue my study there in Jerusalem, and I found out that since at the Hebrew University there was never any program in technical studies, that the option to do a PhD in physics is closed because they thought my engineering background provides very little of what they needed for their physics program. And I found out that they started some new field. Never heard about it before. And I'm speaking about year of '62. What was that new field? Business administration. Mm-hmm. And there I studied and got an additional second degree in business administration, but specializing in the quantitative fields. I was sent by the university for my doctoral studies. They thought that I'm suitable to teach in a business administration program, production management. I was sent and was accepted by Columbia University, and there I was accepted by the School of Business Administration, but I took courses in the School of Engineering, in the Department of Industrial Engineering. So one of my last teachers that was, I don't know whether you heard the name, Sebastian Litauer. Sebastian Litauer got the Schuhart Award. When I finished my master's degree at the Technion in Israel there was no computer yet of any kind. Only later on, around 61, 62, they started to construct at the Weizmann Institute of Science a huge computer in a hall at the length of maybe 25 yards and so on, a computer made of 10,000 of diodes with computing power less than the computing power of a common calculator, electronic calculator today. When I got to Columbia University for my PhD program, for my thesis, Columbia University did not have yet any computer. And remember that the business school was named after Watson. Watson was the president of IBM. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, they did not have yet any computer.
While seeking his doctoral degree at Columbia University in New York, Ladany began training more seriously as a long-distance race walker with former U.S. Olympians, and he soon began breaking long-standing records while aiming for the Olympic Games.
During my time at Columbia University, obviously when I arrived, I was already Israeli champion, race walking champion, but not at results that were of high level. Before I left for the United States, in Israel I participated in the Maccabiah Games. In Israel. Maccabiah Games are a kind of quasi-Olympic Games for Jews. Right. And there I met somebody from the United States, and he told me when I arrived for the doctoral studies, he will introduce me to the U.S. walkers in New York, and I could train with them on weekends. And indeed, I started to train on many of the weekends together with them and learn on common problems that we had. And I discovered that I have exceptional abilities in the long distances. Obviously, I had to train for it, and I trained very hard. In '66, I have participated in the Eastern Regional 50-mile race walking championship in New Jersey, won it, and broke the oldest United States record of any kind. It was an 80-year-old record. Wow. I set for the 50-mile 8 hours 35 minutes. My wife told me this is probably the best or the largest success that I will ever have in my life, and I agreed with her. Yeah. But next year, in '67, I improved my own U.S. record and lowered the record to 8:11. In '68, I improved my own record, U.S. record, to 8:05. And obviously, I was with training with the U.S. Walkers, that many of them were ex-Olympians and or had Olympic aspirations. I got that also that same aspiration, and I have broken the Israeli standard for the Mexico Olympic Games. And immediately as I got my PhD, 1st of February 68, and the Olympic Games were late October. Instead of taking on any teaching job at any university, I did nothing else but just trained for the Olympic Games. I really became quite successful. Participated in Mexico in the Olympic Games. I returned to Israel. Started my academic career at Tel Aviv University. But in 1970, I returned to United States for that 50-mile championship, reduced my own 50-mile record to 7 hours and I believe 57 minutes or something like this. That was in 1970. And obviously, in 69, in Israel, I wanted to try to repeat Olympic fever to get for the second time to the Olympic Games, for the 72 games. And in 71, I had started seriously to train. In 72, I flew again to the United States to participate in the same 50-mile championship. And not only that, I have improved my own U.S. record, but set a world record of 7 hours, 23 minutes, and 50 seconds. Remember, I started with 8 hours 35. Now I reduced it to 7:23, and until today it's still world record.
Wow!
And I continue to be a race walker.
Have you ever been part of an engineering project or team and wished you were calling the shots? This is IISE's Michael Hughes. The online Masters in Engineering Management at the University of Louisville can expand your career opportunities and prepare you to take leadership roles in just 10 courses. Classes cover topics like engineering operations, financial management, and more. You can also earn your Six Sigma Black Belt certification. All you need is a bachelor's in a STEM field and the drive to take your career to the next level. Take charge of engineering projects and teams. Get started today at louisville.edu/online.
Ladani describes his early teaching career in Israel and how he emphasized to his students the need to think through problems on their own rather than memorize various methods.
In 75, I joined Ben-Gurion University in the Department of Industrial Engineering, but really I did not change my field. Only the department that employed me changed, because in all my academic career, I dealt with the quantitative subjects. Quality control, production management, and operations research. Mm-hmm. That was my field, and I stayed with it. I don't know what brought me to understand the field of how to try to educate people in industrial engineering, but not only in industrial engineering, at least in quantitative fields. And when I'm saying operations research, that's a part of industrial engineering. Initially, you have to provide always the basics, the tools. But then you have to teach people how to think, how to try to solve problems that they have never seen before. Such approach can be done only after you have provided them with some basic tools.
Right.
And I even in various examinations, I never asked, and I told my students in advance, never to memorizing. I let them to have an open book at examination, whatever book they decided to have with them, and let them to write in the book whatever they wanted. But and in the examination, I provided them with a problem. So a problem where they had to find out really what the real problem is, and then how to approach it, and how to try to solve it. Mm-hmm. The moment that you know how to try to solve it, then there are many possibilities for the solution. If you teach them just with various methods and so on, they don't get that habit of thinking how to try to cope with problems. The education has changed. As always, the changes appear. I heard that in 1910s there was electrical engineering and mechanical engineering were in one department, one subject. And they got separated later on. So separations, divisions, that's the rule of the changes. Out of our department or inside the department, we have also robotics and all the different fields that deal with data management, information systems, and so on. More and more. It's all in the same scope, but we have also generated additional departments. You might also group them together under the umbrella of industrial engineering. I would say that the students at colleges in industrial engineering are qualified technicians. Most of them. There are exceptions, obviously. On the other hand, at the universities, the students have much higher intellectual abilities, and they get a much better preparation, and they are able to cope much better with problems. Obviously, there are exceptions, but this is the situation. Now, in the United States, I know you have so many universities and so many colleges, and you don't expect that a small state college would have the same ability as a graduate of Stanford or MIT.
Ladani discusses the growth of industrial and systems engineering in Israel and the different fields in which it is applied.
Yes, it is growing, and they are working in various fields, not necessarily in production, or most of them are not in production. Many of them in various services, like medical services, transportation, banking, and in the recent years in various startups which become programmers. This is, in my view, not what we would have liked them to do. But since in Israel there are so many new startups, and the startups are mainly dealing with various information systems.
Ladani discusses his teaching and research efforts and the publications he's been part of.
Now I can tell a few things about myself. I was one of the first that started the integration of production, marketing, pricing, and inventory. I published something in around 1970, and it started, and many other publications where the problem of integrating simultaneously all problems from all those fields were there. Likewise, I followed, don't know whether you heard the names Dodge and Romick in quality control, in sampling and so on. But I studied those things, but I was one of the first, if not the first, that started economic optimization in quality control, taking into consideration the various costs. Mm-hmm. Likewise, I was the first that started to take into consideration in economic consideration in setting warranty periods. And I was so among one of the first that started to apply operations research, really optimization in sports decisions. Was the editor of a special issue of Management Science, of another issue, and of two books. Plus, I wrote the entry on that subject on 3 editions of the Encyclopedia of Management Science and Operations Research, and published maybe 15 papers or more on that subject. So optimization, in sports, many of the decisions were usually intuitive. Professor Emeritus, since 2006, I'm still engaged in research dealing with trying to find the coordinates of targets. Published several papers on that, and especially presently trying to find the best method. There are several methods to estimate the point of intersection of rotated ellipses in the space when they should have had a common point of intersection, but they do not have. Mm-hmm. And there are several methods. All of them take a different time, and all of them provide different accuracies, and to try to evaluate those different methods.
Ladani discusses how he's staying active as a race walker, including a long-time birthday tradition.
I'm still race walking up to since my 50th birthday. At that time, I was at Georgia Tech. I started to celebrate my birthdays by walking 1 kilometer for each year of my age. My 83rd birthday, I walked 83 kilometers, planned in April 84 this year to do a walk of 84 kilometers, but then came the corona. And but on 28th of February, I still walked the Tel Aviv marathon, full distance of marathon, which is 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I still walked it, being the oldest participant in the marathon. Whether I will be able to do next year, which is in 7 months now, 85 kilometers, I don't know. What I can say that since we are not getting younger, neither myself, I feel from year to year how every mile gets longer and how every slope gets steeper.
Here Ladani discusses how he might be remembered for his athletic and academic careers.
I don't know how I will be remembered. I know that I got awards, unusual awards from two directions, which I know that is unusual. By the way, I won also the 100-kilometer World Championship after Munich, a month after it, and I won Master Championships and set a world record in the 100-mile for the 70-plus age group. From the sports side, the International Olympic Committee awarded me the Baron Pierre de Coubertin medal. Baron Pierre de Coubertin was the one that resumed the Olympic Games, right, or restarted the Olympic Games, the modern Olympic Games in 1896, I believe.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he directed several of the first Olympic Games. So, and that award is a very rare one. I got it for my unusual achievements. On the other side, in Israel, I got several lifetime achievement awards in industrial engineering. So I am very proud that I was awarded both for my sports achievements as well as for my academic achievements. How long I will be remembered, I don't know.
In closing, Ladani discusses the lessons learned from his long and adventurous life that he can pass along to others.
I don't hate people, but I remember. I have a good memory still, although it is fading for names, but still I have a good memory. What I can tell you, what is important for persons. First, that I learned from the Holocaust. You should take care of yourself. Very few others will try to help you. That's true as an individual, and it's true also as a country. Mm-hmm. Only with the interest. I don't know how much you are aware of history of Czechoslovakia when Nazi Germany took part of them first, Sudets. Nobody intervened, and so on. Mm-hmm. If you are not strong enough, and you cannot defend yourself, you might lose a lot, including your own life, your own independence. You should be strong. Second, you always might lose all your assets. My father we left in Yugoslavia everything that we had, never got any compensation. His young uncle that I mentioned, he has started from scratch, and he has built the largest pharmaceutical concern of Yugoslavia. It was taken away as a Jewish property in 1941 by the Nazi regime of Croatia. Then became independent. Then it was nationalized by the communists, and no penny was ever restituted. It was sold, by the way. Just I want to point out what type of property we are speaking. It was sold only the pharmaceutical concern, not houses, not yachts, and so on. It was sold for $2.5 billion about 10 or 15 years ago to an Israeli pharmaceutical concern. $2.5 billion. The family did not receive a penny restitution. What remains when you lose? Your knowledge and your ability to earn. You have to educate people so that such causes that caused in the 1930s in Germany the lack of democracy, and then the rise of the Nazi Party. You have to teach children and people how to keep democracy.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in learning more about Shaul Ladani's fascinating life and career, you can read more about him in the November 2020 issue of IISE magazine.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Problem Solved, the IISE podcast, a production of the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers in Metro Atlanta. This podcast is produced by David Brandt, Keith Albertson, and Michael Hughes, and edited by David Brandt. You can listen to all episodes of Problem Solved and learn about sponsorship opportunities by visiting our website, podcast.iise.org. You can also learn more about IISE at the Institute's website, www.iise.org.